The twin sons of Kotil rose like molten coins over the Temple of Origins, their light spilling across the obsidian steps carved tens of thousands of years before the first human learned to spark fire. Pilgrims from dozens of species lined the pathway, murmuring prayers in languages carried from the farthest corners of the Orion arm. But today, the prayers were tense, uncertain. For today, the trial of the tongues would begin. Every century, the priests of the Varn Order tested chosen Offworlders to determine if any were blessed with the gift of resonance, the ability to speak the first language, the mythical prototongue said to be created by the architects themselves. No human had ever passed. In fact, humans were considered the least likely to possess the subtle neurological pathways required for resonance, which made the arrival of a single human woman all the more laughable. Aryan Solon stood quietly at the temple entrance, hands clasped behind her back, observing the towering stone monoliths with calm curiosity. Her dark hair was tied into a neat braid, her posture rigid with military discipline. She didn't wear ceremonial garb like the other candidates. Just a simple gray exploration uniform with the emblem of the Terran Linguistic Corps. The pilgrims whispered as she passed. "Why is a human here? Do they think this is a game? They don't even hear the resonance. How could they speak it?" At the top of the grand staircase stood High Priest Korvax, robes shimmering with embedded crystal fibers that glowed faintly with the temple's ambient energy. His 4 golden eyes narrowed as the human approached. "A human," he said, voice echoing like rolling thunder. "I was told the Terran Union insisted on sending a representative. I did not believe it." Aryan bowed politely. "Thank you for receiving me, High Priest. I am honored to participate." Korvax's mandibles clicked in irritation. The trial of tongues is not a playground. Only those born with resonance can hope to speak the first language. Your species lacks the mental architecture. You will fail. Aryan smiled faintly. Not arrogant, just amused. "We'll see." The high priest scoffed and motioned her inside. The great hall was enormous, domed with luminous runes that drifted like constellations. At the center stood an ancient pillar of living crystal, the Echo Spire. Only those who awakened its dormant glyphs could be considered true resonance. Dozens of species watched from the gallery seats. The hall buzzed with curiosity and disdain. Korvax slammed his staff. "Let the trials begin." Beginning, the impossible candidate. The first candidate, an Illuvian with feathery antennae, stepped forward. They touched the Echo Spire and whispered harmonizing frequencies. The crystal pulsed gently. Acknowledgement, nothing more. The crowd murmured approval. The second candidate, a 7-limbed Vurak hybrid, chanted melodic tones that made the glyphs flicker briefly. Respectful applause followed. One by one, candidates displayed varying degrees of resonance. None truly woke the spire. Then Korvax raised his staff. "Aryan Solon of Terra, step forward." The hall fell silent. Aryan placed both palms on the crystalline surface. It felt cool, almost alive. She closed her eyes. Deep in her mind, she felt the faint hum, the same ancient structure she had studied for 15 years, ever since she discovered symbols on a derelict wreck orbiting Zeta Reticuli. Symbols that matched the first language. She inhaled slowly. Then she spoke. "The middle, the ancient tongue returns." Her voice was soft but carried across the hall like wind through ancient caverns. The syllables were rough yet rhythmic, shaped by careful study and intuition. Each word struck the air like a harmonic key. Asha Talu. Veren Kaethesh. The echo spire shuddered. A deep, resonant hum rippled outward, vibrating the stone underfoot. The glyphs, dormant for millennia, suddenly blazed to life, pouring brilliant gold and violet light into the hall. Every pilgrim gasped. Korvax's staff clattered to the ground. Impossible, he whispered, stunned. A human cannot produce architect resonance. This is. Aryan continued speaking. The ancient symbols spiraled around her, forming rotating halos of light. The air tasted of ozone and forgotten power. The temple itself seemed to awaken, as if recognizing a long-lost command sequence. Aryan finished her phrase, hands lowering from the spire. Silence stretched like a drawn wire. The echo spire pulsed one final time, projecting a holographic sigil above its apex, a symbol no one had seen in recorded history. The mark of the Pathseeker. The audience erupted in chaos. She bears the sign. The architects have chosen a human. This cannot be. Aryan stepped back, light still flickering around her fingers. Korvax approached, trembling. How did you learn the first tongue? No human mind should be able to hear the resonance. Aryan remained calm. Because it's similar to something very old on Earth. Older than recorded history. We never knew what those symbols meant, so we catalogued them, studied them, and eventually, some of us learned to pronounce them. Korvax stared at her as though she had just rewritten the laws of physics. The first language predates the rise of every known species in this galaxy. You mean to say, Earth contains remnants of the architects? Aryan shrugged lightly. Maybe they visited. Maybe we're connected in ways we never realized. Before the priest could respond, the temple lights suddenly darkened. A deep bass tremor shook the ground. An alarm blared through the hall. One of the acolytes burst into the chamber. High Priest. A Korthal warship has decloaked above the temple. They demand we surrender the human immediately. The crowd panicked. The Korthal, zealots, scavengers, conquerors, believed the first language was the key to unlocking forbidden architect technology. If they captured Aryan, they'd force her to activate dormant superweapons buried across the galaxy. Korvax spun toward Aryan. You must leave. Now. Aryan shook her head. If they want me, they'll harm everyone here. The Temple of Origins could be destroyed. Korvax clenched his jaw. What do you propose? Aryan looked up at the glowing glyphs still swirling faintly around the spire. We use the first language. The climax. The tongue of command. With the Korthal ship deploying ground forces, the temple shook under weapons fire. Pilgrims fled through side tunnels while the guards formed a shaky defensive perimeter. Aryan and Korvax raced back to the Echo Spire. The architects built a planetary defense grid here, Aryan said, breath coming fast. Your texts mention a silent guardian. I think the spire is the key. Korvax's eyes widened. The guardian colossus, it was believed to be myth. It's real, Aryan said. And I think I know how to wake it. She placed her palms back on the crystal. The Korthal soldiers burst into the hall, weapons raised. Aryan exhaled. And spoke. This time the first language poured out of her like a river of fire, command tones, activation glyphs, geometric sequences. The crystal glowed hot white. The entire temple shook as ancient machinery deep beneath the surface roared to life. Outside, the sand split open. A titanic figure rose from beneath the crust, an obsidian colossus with runes blazing across its body. A war machine older than civilization. The Korthul panicked, firing wildly. The colossus lifted its arm. A sphere of luminous energy formed in its palm. Arian's voice tightened as she gave the final command. Jura Ka Ren. The energy sphere exploded outward in a controlled wave. Korthul's soldiers were disintegrated. Their warship shields collapsed before the colossus struck it with a beam that split the sky. The warship detonated in orbit, scattering molten wreckage across the upper atmosphere. Silence returned. The colossus knelt before the temple like a guardian awaiting further orders. Arian's legs buckled. She leaned against the spire, trembling. Korvax caught her. "You," he whispered, staring at her in awe. "You are not merely a resonant. You are a speaker." The ending, a new path for two civilizations. By dusk, crowds gathered around the temple, whispering in reverence and disbelief. The guardian colossus stood immobile on the horizon, visible for miles. Arian sat on the temple steps, catching her breath while medics checked her vitals. Korvax approached, now bowing deeply, the bow typically reserved for saints. "Arian Solon of Terra," he said formally, "by awakening the first tongue and saving Kotil, you have earned the eternal respect of the Van Order." Arian raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean you'll stop saying humans don't have resonance?" Korvax sighed. "It means I must rewrite several sacred books." She chuckled. "But more importantly," he continued, "you have opened a door we never believed would exist. The Terran Union must be brought into the circle of origins. Your species is more connected to the architects than we ever guessed." Arian stood, looking out at the now peaceful horizon. "Maybe that was always the point," she said softly. "Maybe the first language wasn't meant to be exclusive. Maybe the architects wanted someone, anyone, to rediscover it when the galaxy needed them most." Korvax nodded slowly. "And today, that someone was human." Arian smiled faintly, sunlight glinting off her uniform. "Well," she said, "then let's see what other secrets the first tongue still holds." Above them, the colossus hummed softly, as if waiting for her next command. And across the galaxy, ancient structures long dormant flickered awake, reacting to a voice not heard for eons. A human voice.